You won't find this story in any history book, and most wouldn't dare to whisper it aloud. But I was there when NASA buried the truth. Back then, I was young, ambitious, and naive, a freshly minted engineer from MIT, working in the hallowed halls of NASA during humanity's golden age of space exploration. I thought I had joined to help achieve mankind's greatest triumph. I didn't realize I'd signed up to witness its darkest secrets. Secrets so haunting, they sear themselves into your soul. Most believe the Apollo program
32
ended with
seconds
Apollo
into the flight.
17 in 1972.
The 3 liquid
A
fuel main
crowning
engines
achievement
soon will
that
throttle
marked the
back to
end of an era.
72% of rated
That's the
performance
official
down in the
story.
bucket, reducing
But the
the stress on
reality
the
is
shuttle as
far
it goes
darker.
transonic.
There was another mission, hidden, erased from history. We called it Artemis. But in hushed circles, it's been whispered as Apollo 18. What unfolded on that mission is why NASA abruptly abandoned lunar exploration. They didn't just lose interest in the moon, they fled from it. The moon, you see, is not what we've been told. To this day, I'm unsure if it's natural at all. What I know for certain is that it hides something waiting, watching. It began in the aftermath of Apollo 16 and 17. Strange data trickled back to us. Magnetic anomalies, seismic readings that defied all logic. We thought we'd uncovered clues to the moon's past, volcanic activity or something geological. But we were wrong. So terribly wrong. The Artemis mission was fast-tracked. Officially, it was sold to the public as a continuation of Apollo's legacy, a step toward a permanent lunar presence. But those behind the curtain knew the truth. Classified findings demanded answers. A rhythmic vibration, deep beneath the lunar surface, had sparked concern at the highest levels of government. They wanted to know, was it a threat? The astronauts we sent were the best humanity had to offer. Brave, skilled, but they were walking into the unknown, a darkness far beyond anything they could have imagined. I remember the live feed from their helmet cams as they descended onto the moon's far side, a place of jagged shadows and eternal cold.
32
Unlike the
seconds
gray
into the
plains
flight.
we're familiar with,
The
this
3 liquid
landscape
fuel
was
main
hostile,
engines soon will
alien,
throttle back to
scarred with
72% of
craters
rated
so deep they
performance down
seemed
in
to
the bucket,
swallow light.
reducing the stress on the
Tension
shuttle as it goes
crackled in their
transonic.
voices. They joked about ghosts and lunar monsters, but the unease was palpable. For a while, everything appeared routine. Geological surveys, sample collection, all standard. Until the second day. That's when the seismic instruments picked up the pulse. It was steady, rhythmic, like the beat of a drum. And it came from deep within a massive crater we hadn't fully mapped because of its impenetrable shadows. Natural vibrations on the moon are random, chaotic. This was patterned, deliberate, intelligent. The astronauts approached the crater. What they found defied belief. At the bottom, the ground wasn't rock. It was metal, smooth, impossibly reflective, and etched with grooves, like circuitry or ancient runes. The surface shimmered under the rover's light, as if alive. One astronaut joked about a moon base from a bad sci-fi movie. Nobody laughed. Then the hum began. Low, resonant, and all-encompassing, it seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. Their communications faltered, distorted as if submerged in water. One astronaut, Lieutenant Hayes, complained of a headache. Commander Patel swore she saw movement in the shadows, shifting forms that disappeared when the camera turned. And then, without warning, Captain Riley was gone. One moment, he was inspecting a fissure in the metallic
32
surface.
seconds into the
The
flight.
next, his vitals
The
flatlined.
3 liquid fuel
No
main
sound,
engines soon will
no
throttle back
trace.
to
The fissure
72%
was
of
too
rated
small for
performance
him
down
to
in the
fall
bucket,
into,
reducing the stress
and
on the shuttle
telemetry
as it
showed
goes
no movement.
transonic.
Yet Riley's voice crackled over the comms. "Help me," he whispered. His voice was faint, broken by static, but unmistakable. He kept repeating, "I'm here. I'm inside." Inside what? Patel and Hayes argued. Patel wanted to retreat. Hayes insisted they find Riley. But before NASA could intervene, the interference grew so severe we lost contact entirely. For 27 agonizing hours, we waited in silence, each second heavier than the last. When the feed finally returned, chaos erupted. Patel and Hayes were sprinting toward the lunar module, gasping for air, their oxygen levels critically low despite minimal exertion. Their helmet cams flickered wildly, showing glimpses of the crater behind them. The metallic surface shimmered, pulsating faintly, alive. Patel screamed, "We have to leave. It's waking up." The hum grew louder, a deafening resonance that seemed to vibrate through the control room itself. Engineers clutched their heads, grimacing. The sound wasn't just heard, it was felt, burrowing into bone and mind alike. When the astronauts reached the module, they were on the verge of asphyxiation. Their wide, terror-stricken eyes told us more than their words ever could. They refused to speak about what had happened in those 27 hours. 6 months later, Patel ended her own life. Hayes vanished without a trace a year later. What we uncovered on the moon was not human. It wasn't inert, and it wasn't dead. Even now, I hear the hum in my nightmares. It showed them things beyond comprehension. Some truths I've learned should remain buried. The command room was gripped by dread as the emergency override sequence was initiated on the lunar module systems. If Patel and Hayes were alive, we had to extract them. Remotely, the module's thrusters roared to life, beginning its ascent back to the command module orbiting above. Relief was fleeting. The module responded as expected, its engines igniting, but then it began. The hum, that low, pulsating resonance returned, louder, more invasive, tearing through every frequency we could monitor. The seismic readings on the moon's surface spiked violently, as though the ground itself was convulsing in defiance of the module's movement. The sound became overwhelming, obliterating all telemetry in a wall of static. But then, through the static, we heard it. A voice, weak yet unmistakable. "Don't bring it back." We froze. It was Patel's voice. Panic rose like bile in my throat. Then she spoke again, this time more frantic, her words fractured with terror. "You don't understand. It's not." Her voice cut off, replaced by a guttural sound, an inhuman growl that wasn't static or interference. It was alive, a deep, pulsating rhythm that mirrored the hum, like the heartbeat of some ancient, slumbering creature. The module's engines died abruptly, the telemetry feed falling silent. And just like that, our last connection to Patel and Hayes was severed. The room stood in stunned silence, suffocated by the realization that this was no ordinary failure. Command argued endlessly, their voices a chaotic blend of fear and denial. There was no protocol for this. We had crossed a line, ventured into something beyond our comprehension, and it was fighting back. Another team was hastily assembled, their mission simple: return to the site and find answers. As their descent began, the atmosphere in the control room turned oppressive, a suffocating dread hanging over us. When the live feed from their helmet cams began streaming, it felt less like a mission and more like watching the prelude to a nightmare. The crater was transformed. What was once smooth, lifeless geometry now looked twisted, almost organic. Its grooves and patterns deepened as though it had grown in their absence. The fissure was larger, its edges pulsating faintly with an eerie, otherworldly light. "It's alive," one astronaut, Lieutenant Carver, whispered, his voice trembling. "This whole thing, it's alive." Their lights swept over the warped structure, the hum now deafening, resonating through their suits and into their very bones. Then Carver stopped, frozen at the edge of the fissure. "They're calling for us," he murmured, his eyes wide with terror. Despite their fear, the team descended. The walls of the fissure glistened, pulsating with a grotesque rhythm. And then came the voices, not just Patel and Hayes, but many others. Layers upon layers of agonized cries, fractured and desperate. "Help me! Don't leave! It's not what you think!" The voices crescendoed, forming a singular, horrifying scream. Before anyone could stop him, Carver stepped closer, his light piercing the depths of the fissure, revealing an impossible chamber stretching into endless darkness. The walls breathed, the grooves glowing with a sickly luminescence. Then it happened. The fissure flared with a blinding light, enveloping Carver. His screams were brief, cut off as the light consumed him entirely. When it faded, he was gone. Not a trace remained, not even a shadow. Panic erupted. The remaining astronauts scrambled to escape as the structure began to collapse, the ground trembling violently. The hum reached an unbearable crescendo before everything, light, sound, movement, stopped. The crater was silent and still, as if nothing had ever been there. The survivors returned to Earth in silence, their hollow eyes betraying the horrors they had witnessed. The mission was immediately classified, the data buried deep in the labyrinth of bureaucracy. But the questions remained. What had we awakened? Years later, the truth still haunts me. The moon was not what we thought, a lifeless rock orbiting Earth. It was something far older, far darker. The signals it sent weren't cries for help. They were a summons, and we answered. Now the hum
32
persists.
seconds into the flight.
It is faint, but it's there
3 liquid
emanating
fuel
from
main
deep
engines.
space.
Soon we'll throttle
And
back
the
to
question that keeps
72% of
me
rated
awake at
performance.
night
Down
is
in the
no
bucket,
longer what
reducing
have
the
we
stress on
found,
the shuttle as it
it's
goes
what has found
transonic.
us.